We spend so much of our time trying to control the world around us.
Oh, absolutely. Like, constantly.
Yeah, we try to micromanage our careers, we curate our relationships, we just desperately manage the way people perceive us.
It's exhausting, honestly.
It really is. But when you finally strip it all down to the studs, there's this massive, terrifying, and honestly liberating realization waiting for you.
Right.
You actually control very, very little of what happens to you.
Yeah.
But you do have absolute control over how you respond.
Which is, exactly what we're getting into today.
Exactly. So welcome to today's deep dive. Our source material today is a personal reading log dated May 19th. It's titled Water Storms and the Art of Response.
It's a really fascinating document.
It is. It's essentially this curated journal entry filled with proverbs, aphorisms, and excerpts from thinkers ranging from Seth Godin to the Buddha.
Robert Greene, Ryan Holiday. Yeah, it's quite the mix.
Right. And our mission for this deep dive is to explore a single, quietly radical idea that pulses through all these notes.
And at first glance, it looks like just a disparate list of quotes you might find scattered across the internet.
Just a bunch of random inspiration.
Yeah, exactly. But when you spend time analyzing the actual mechanics of what these thinkers are saying, you realize they're all examining the exact same thing. They're looking at the architecture of a resilient life.
The idea that your identity, who you fundamentally are, is completely determined by how you respond to the things you can't control.
To ground this, the notes offer us this overarching metaphor right from the jump. It's an ancient proverb that states, "Pure water is the world's first and foremost medicine."
I love that one.
Right. Think about the physical properties of water for a second. It doesn't argue, it doesn't, announce itself or demand recognition.
Yeah, when a river hits a massive boulder, the water doesn't get angry at the rock.
Exactly. It doesn't waste energy trying to negotiate with it. It just persists. It finds a microscopic seam through the rock, or it builds up and flows around it simply by being uncompromisingly itself.
It's just the perfect mechanical model for an examined life. So as we go through this today, I want you, the listener, to keep a question in the back of your mind.
It's a tough question, too.
Yeah, it is. As you look at the challenges, the roadblocks, the conflicts in your own life right now, are you acting like the water or are you acting like the stone?
And to figure out how to respond like water, we first have to look at what happens when we hit an immovable object.
Metaphorical stones.
Right. We have to look at how we handle the absolute hardest things thrown at us.
Well, the sources bring up this incredible story from the author Ryan Holiday about a young Jim Lawson.
Oh, this story is it's powerful.
It really is. It takes place in the 1950s. Jim Lawson is 10 years old, just walking down a street in his neighborhood, and a child in a passing car leans out the window and yells a horrific racial slur at him.
Just a drive-by act of absolute unprovoked cruelty.
Right. Now, the default psychological response for anyone, especially a parent witnessing this happen to their child, would be intense rage.
Oh, without a doubt. Or maybe an instinct to just shelter the child and completely deny the cruelty of the outside world,
But the mother does something entirely different.
It is a masterclass in psychology. She performs this radical reframing of where power actually lives in a transaction like that.
Yeah, she looks at her son and basically says, "What good did that do, Jimmy? We all love you, and God loves you. We believe in you."
With all that love, what harm does that stupid insult do?
Right. It's nothing. Just ignorant words from an ignorant child who is gone from your life the moment it was said.
And when I first read that, I have to admit, I thought she was just telling him to turn the other cheek. Like it was a lesson in just bearing the pain quietly.
Yeah. It's so easy to read it that way. But it's
Yeah.
actually surgical precision. She wasn't teaching him to be passive. She was teaching him the mechanics of identity.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
Well, think about the physics of an insult. The slur, the stone that was thrown at him, it actually has no kinetic energy of its own once it lands.
It's literally just sound waves dissipating in the air.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It only gains lasting power if Jim decides to bend down, pick it up, and build his internal architecture around it.
Oh, wow.
She was explicitly pointing out that his internal foundation was already fully constructed out of love, intelligence, and purpose.
Because that foundation was solid, those words literally had nothing to attach to.
Right. And we know this framing worked because Jim Lawson grew up to organize the highly disciplined, nonviolent Nashville sit-ins of the 1960s.
When actual physical, life-threatening stones were being thrown at him, his internal foundation held completely firm.
Okay, let's unpack this because it connects perfectly to an aphorism in the reading log from Michael J. Kilby.
The one about building materials.
Yeah, he wrote, "People will judge you for no reason. Use the stones they cast to build a solid foundation."
It's so practical.
When I read that, it instantly made me think of emotional judo.
Oh, I like that. How do you mean?
Well, look at the mechanics of judo. The entire martial art is based on the premise that you do not meet force with force.
Right, you don't just stand there.
No. If a massive opponent charges at you, you don't stand there and try to stop them like a brick wall. If you try to absorb their momentum directly, you get crushed.
You step slightly off the line of attack.
Exactly. You grab their uniform and you use their own momentum to throw them to the mat.
That makes perfect sense. So when someone throws a stone at you, a cruel judgment, an insult, a massive professional rejection.
If you take it personally and let it hit your ego directly, you are taking the full force of their momentum. You get crushed.
But if you practice emotional judo, you step aside.
Right. You let the insult miss your core identity. You catch the stone and you say, "Thanks for the free building material."
You use the energy of their negativity to reinforce your own impenetrable fortress. That is a brilliant way to visualize the cognitive process.
It really reframes everything.
Because the cruelty in the world is an objective reality. The stones are real. The question is simply what you are going to manufacture out of them.
So for you listening right now, consider the stones currently being thrown at you.
Maybe someone aggressively dismisses your idea in a meeting, or leaves a toxic comment on your work.
Are you absorbing that momentum and letting it dictate your self-worth? Or are you using it as raw, free material to test and reinforce your own resilience?
But, having a fortified internal foundation creates a new problem.
How so?
Well, if you're impenetrable to criticism, how do you ensure you don't just become stubborn and isolated? How do you project that strength outward into the world constructively?
Right. Which moves us into the realm of agency. The journal approaches this first through daily posture.
The log includes a series of morning affirmations, things like, "I always find a way, never an excuse," or "I do what needs to be done regardless."
And these aren't just empty feel-good mantras to hype yourself up in the mirror, are they?
Not at all. They are psychological stances. You are preloading your response to friction before the world even wakes up to offer it.
And the sources apply this posture directly to the outside world through Seth Godin's concept of the minimum viable audience.
This is agency applied to business or art or really any public endeavor.
Yeah, Godin argues that the worst thing you can do is try to please everyone. You shouldn't aim for the masses.
You should begin small. You make something so extraordinarily specific and valuable for a tiny group of people that they would genuinely miss it if it were gone.
Which is the exact opposite of how most people operate.
Oh, entirely. We usually default to seeking mass appeal because it feels safer. We think if we cast a wide enough net, someone is bound to like what we do.
But Godin is pointing out the psychological flaw in that approach.
Right. When you try to please everyone, you inevitably water down your work until it is completely generic. It loses the very edges that make it interesting.
And it forces ultimate accountability. Because if you make a generic product for the masses and it fails, you can blame the algorithm. You can say you didn't have enough marketing budget.
Sure, there's always an excuse.
But if you make something specifically for 10 people, and those 10 people don't care about it, you can't blame anyone else. You have to face the fact that your work didn't resonate.
It is a strategy of profound honesty. If your work doesn't resonate with a small group of people who are already primed to love it, scaling up and throwing $1 million of advertising at it won't fix the core problem.
True agency here means taking full responsibility for the quality and the resonance of what you do, rather than blaming external circumstances.
Exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting. This concept of not watering things down brings us to a really fascinating, though potentially controversial, part of the reading log.
The Robert Greene section.
Yes, the notes introduce a warning from Robert Greene. And look, we need to be clear here for the listener. Greene's arguments about equality touch on some highly charged political and cultural debates.
A necessary distinction.
Right. Our goal today isn't to endorse his viewpoint or to reject it, but to strictly impartially unpack the mechanics of the argument he's making in the text.
So what is the core of his argument?
Greene argues that the demand for equality, when taken to an extreme, becomes a covert power play. He claims that if we demand completely identical treatment and identical outcomes for everyone, regardless of their actual skill or their effort or their achievement,
We are actively suppressing excellence.
yeah, by flattening the playing field entirely, he argues we end up elevating mediocrity and penalizing the truly exceptional. Doesn't elevating excellence over equality risk sounding elitist? How do we impartially view this?
Well, if we look purely at the philosophical framework Green is outlining, it's an argument about honesty, not elitism. It's about human potential.
Okay, go on.
He is suggesting that treating unequal effort as equal is a distortion of reality. To genuinely lift people up to what the notes call their higher selves, you first have to acknowledge that potential, drive, and passion are unevenly distributed.
So flattening everyone out to ensure no one feels inferior doesn't raise the baseline of human achievement.
No, it just lowers the ceiling. And the notes pair Green's argument with an aphorism from Martha Graham, the legendary choreographer, which I think clarifies the mechanism at play here.
He's talking about dancers, right?
Yes. She says, great dancers are great because of their passion, not their technique.
That pairing in the notes is incredibly revealing.
Think about how technique works. Technique is inherently democratic. You can drill technique into almost anyone with enough repetition, discipline, and time.
You can teach 1,000,000 people to place their feet in the exact same position.
Exactly. But passion, that invisible, volatile fire, you cannot manufacture that in a laboratory. It either lives inside a person or it doesn't.
So if a director pretends every dancer is equally passionate, just to be fair to the ensemble, they don't magically spark passion in the uninspired dancers.
No, they don't. They just mute the extraordinary performers. They make the truly fiery, transcendent performances harder to see and celebrate.
Respecting that genuine difference in passion and effort is what actually allows excellence the oxygen it needs to breathe.
Yeah.
So up to this point, the text is laying out a very aggressive philosophy. We have this intense focus on building an impenetrable internal foundation, practicing emotional judo, taking radical agency.
Unapologetically pursuing excellence?
Yeah, you're pushing, you're building, you're finding a way no matter what. But then the reading log throws a massive curveball. It introduces the theme of surrender.
It introduces a jarring dissonance, doesn't it?
It totally derailed me at first. The notes include a dialogue from the Jesuit priest and psychotherapist Anthony de Mello.
The student and the master.
Yeah. A student asks the master, "What must I do for enlightenment?" And the master replies, "Nothing." Because enlightenment doesn't come from it happens.
And the student is confused.
Right. And the master adds, "Oh yes, it can be attained through non-doing." When I read this, I felt like the whole text was contradicting itself.
Because of the agency stuff earlier.
Wait, yeah. We just spent 20 minutes dissecting finding a way, never an excuse, and extreme agency.
Yeah.
How on earth does de Mello's non-doing fit into a philosophy of action? Do they contradict each other?
What's fascinating here is they actually don't. It seems like a paradox, but if we look at the cognitive mechanisms, they complete each other.
I'm going to need an example of that.
Think of it like this. There is a type of striving that opens a door, and a type of striving that slams it shut. The notes pull in a quote from Charles Buxton to explain this. In life, as in chess, forethought wins.
Okay, chess. Let's look at this neurologically.
Imagine two chess players. The first one studies the board, calculates 3 moves ahead, understands the underlying strategy, and executes their move.
That's agency. That's forethought.
Right. Now imagine the second player. They want to win so badly, they are so fixated on forcing the outcome that they are physically gripping the chess pieces so tightly their knuckles are white.
We've all been there.
We have. But what happens in the brain when you do that? When you hyperfixate on forcing an outcome, your brain enters a stress state. Your cortisol spikes. You enter a fight-or-flight mode.
And the biological result of that is literal tunnel vision.
Exactly. Your peripheral vision shuts down. The second player is so consumed by forcing their specific sequence of moves that they can't even see the rest of the board anymore.
They miss the obvious counterattacks because they are blinded by their own tension.
Ah, I see. So non-doing isn't about giving up or being lazy.
No, it's about relaxing your cognitive grip so your brain can actually process the whole board.
Precisely. It is the quality of your attention versus the brute quantity of your effort. You prepare meticulously, you position yourself with excellence. That is the doing.
And then, well, you have to let the game play out. That is the non-doing.
You cannot force the universe to yield to your timeline. And this peaks with a beautiful summation attributed to the Buddha in the text.
In the end, only 3 things matter: How much you loved, how gently you lived, and how gracefully you let go of things not meant for you.
How gracefully you let go of things not meant for you. That is so incredibly difficult to execute in real time.
Because it requires overriding our deepest instincts. We often confuse letting go with defeat.
But according to this philosophy, graceful release is actually the highest, most sophisticated form of agency.
It is having the immense wisdom to recognize what you absolutely cannot force and having the courage to release it so you can redirect your limited energy back to the things you can control.
But how do you actually train your brain to do that? You can't gracefully release a job opportunity you desperately wanted or a long-term relationship that ended if your mind is in a state of absolute panic.
Which brings us to our final themes in the log: serenity and compound consequences. The sources include a prose poem from Ching-Kwa Lam about seeking serenity when chaos looms.
And I'll be honest, my initial reaction to this poem was skepticism.
Really?
Yeah, Lamb writes about gazing at the glossy sky, feeling the green grass under your feet, and listening to the sound of faith like a reed flute playing inside your chest.
It sounds lovely.
When I first read it, it felt a bit like escapism. Just look at the clouds and ignore the fact that your life is falling apart. How is that actually helpful when you have real crises to solve?
It sounds like escapism until you look at the physiological mechanism of panic. When a crisis hits, your amygdala, the fear center of your brain, hijacks your nervous system.
Right, your heart rate skyrockets, your breathing gets shallow.
You physically cannot engage in high-level problem solving in that state. So looking at the sky isn't ignoring the problem.
Exactly, it's physiological grounding. Lamb isn't saying you should run away to a mountaintop. The chaos is still right in front of you.
But when everything around you is spinning, you don't try to stop the world from spinning.
Because that's impossible. Instead, you return to what is actual and immediate, your breath, the physical sensation of the ground.
You are intentionally down-regulating your nervous system.
The profound realization Lamb offers is that serenity lives inside you. It is a biological resource you carry into the chaos, not a destination you arrive at once the chaos magically clears.
And maintaining that internal resource requires daily discipline. The notes make this point with a transition that is honestly hilarious.
Oh, the golf course joke.
Yes. Mixed in with all this high philosophy from the Buddha and Martha Graham, there is a joke about a golf course. It says, when you go to the golf course, you see a lot of old men, and you see a lot of fat men. But you don't see a lot of old, fat men.
It is quite the tonal shift, but it illustrates a brutal truth.
It's the ultimate reality check.
This raises an important question about compound consequences. We talk about compound interest in finance all the time, but we rarely apply it to biology and psychology.
The reading log pairs this joke with a simple two-word directive: sit less, move more.
It's the most understated entry for the day, but it carries immense weight. Philosophy isn't just an intellectual exercise, it is lived in the physical body.
Small biological choices repeated over decades literally compound into your destiny.
The person who finds small ways to stay in motion day after day reaches old age with a fundamentally different capacity than the person who doesn't.
Which ties right back to the water metaphor. Movement is medicine. Stillness is medicine. And they aren't opposites. They are both necessary tools to process the constant friction of life.
Speaking of friction, there's a proverb included near the end of the log. Tolerance is the oil which takes the friction out of life.
Often we hear the word tolerance, and we think of it as a passive weakness. Like, oh, I guess I just have to tolerate this terrible situation.
But the notes reframe tolerance as an act of mechanical engineering. Think about the thermodynamics of an engine.
Okay.
If two metal gears are grinding against each other at high speeds without any oil, what happens? They create immense friction, they generate massive amounts of heat, and eventually the heat destroys the engine block entirely.
It tears itself apart.
Yes. Now, introducing oil into that engine doesn't remove the gears, and it doesn't stop the high-speed motion. It simply transforms the interaction.
A gear with oil transfers energy cleanly, dissipating the heat without destroying itself.
Exactly. When you practice tolerance, when you don't react with blind rage to an insult, when you gracefully let go of what isn't yours, when you downregulate your nervous system in the face of chaos,
You are applying oil to the gears of your life. You are saving your own psychological engine from burning out. Let's pull all of these threads together. We've covered a massive amount of ground today.
we really have.
We looked at Seth Godin's minimum viable audience, Robert Greene's uncompromising view on excellence, Ryan Holiday's story of Jim Lawson practicing emotional judo,
The Buddha's graceful release and Anthony de Mello's paradox of non-doing.
On the surface, it seems like a chaotic mix of totally unrelated ideas. But if we look at the underlying mechanisms, they are absolutely not conflicting.
No, they are the exact same insight, just refracted through different facets of the human experience.
So what does this all mean? For you listening, it all flows back to the metaphor of water. Water cleanses. It finds a way through the tiniest seam in the rock.
It doesn't demand credit for the canyon it carves over a million years.
In the face of a thrown stone, or a tiny audience for your art, or a demand to lower your standards, or a period of looming chaos, the universe is basically asking you a question.
The question we started with today.
Are you going to be the water, or are you going to be the thing that blocks it? Who you are is entirely defined by how you respond in the exact moment the stone is thrown.
And to leave you with one final thought to ponder on your own, we've spent this time analyzing how water flows around obstacles, finds the hidden seams, and remains uncompromisingly itself.
Yeah.
But remember that water possesses one other unique, miraculous property. It is infinitely adaptable to its environment.
That's true.
When water meets a massive, impenetrable barrier that it simply cannot flow around, it doesn't just give up and stop. Under intense heat and pressure, it can completely change its state, becoming steam and rising entirely over and above the wall.
Wow.
Or, when trapped in the deep, freezing fissures of a rock, it can become ice expanding with quiet, unstoppable force until it literally cracks the stone from the inside out.
That's a powerful image.
So as you face whatever specific challenge has been thrown into your path right now, ask yourself, does your personal water need to flow around it, rise above it, or freeze and break it open?
I'll see you next time.